Hello, everyone. My name is Quinn Rydell, and I am here to talk about social emotional development theory. So, social emotional development theory is a learning theory that focuses on very gradually helping students gain the skills they need to express, experience, and comprehend their emotions. And this is all done in order to strengthen relationships with others. So, it could be peers, could be teachers, anyone. So that's where the social comes in. Anyways, this presentation was made by my class partner Darean. So we have her table of contents here. So we have three important facts about social emotional learning. We have a quick little page about Erik Erikson, who is the pioneer of this theory. Five core competencies. So if you really want to increase your effectiveness or learn how to properly implement social emotional learning into your classroom environment, that is going to be the one you're going to want to pay attention for. Then we have some keywords, some more stuff that's going to help your understanding and implementation, hopefully. And then we have, for our last slide, we have a video. But I'm not going to play the video today. I am going to have this all on my website, though. So it will be accessible there. Now let's get into it. So, three important facts about social emotional learning. So, social emotional learning, one of the biggest assumptions about it, one of the main bare bones assumptions about it, is that you have to reframe sort of the discipline of whatever context you're in from a very sort of negative connotation, what's wrong with you, to a what happened to you. And that point is going to make a lot more sense once we talk about our second one. So, childhood toxic stress is linked to lifetime lasting changes in brain development, learning, the immune system, things like addiction and disease, poverty, all sorts of things. So, the reason we want to shift from what happened or from what's wrong with you to what happened to you is because it it gets them thinking what happened to you. It gets them in that mindset of thinking about the trauma and understanding sort of that it's not their fault. You're not putting the blame on them. And it's sort of a lot of it's a small change, but it means a lot to the student, and it's very effective in helping them work through whatever childhood stress or trauma that they are dealing with, unfortunately. So, our final point about social emotional learning is students with strong social and emotional confidence are twice as likely to earn a college degree. So, this sort of ties into our other theory that we're looking at in I believe the term was self image, self esteem. So, if you think you're good at something, or if you have a high opinion of yourself, if you're confident in not even in the discipline, but in your ability to learn and your just abilities as a student in general, it's gonna take you a lot further. You're gonna perform a lot better, right? The power of positive thinking is gonna elevate what you could do if you had a very low self image. So let's get into our next slide. So Erik Erikson, obviously a very prolific theorist in the field of education and psychology. As we can see here, he has a Pulitzer. He was born in Frankfurt. I believe he worked with Freud at some point. And in my other screencast, I actually talked about his other theory, the 8 psychological stages of development. Very interesting stuff. Definitely take a look at it if you have not. He coined the term identity crisis, which was jaw dropping to me. Just something that's so ingrained in our everyday vocabulary, someone just invented one day. But yeah, so he's best known for his sort of view of identity development as a struggle between two extremes, and the whole purpose of identity development is to find that medium that works for you, where you can still utilize the very positive trait, but also when it's necessary, utilize the more negatively viewed trait that can also be useful. So that's about all for Erik Erikson. We're going to get right back into the theory now, the social emotional learning. So, 5 core competencies. So, like I said, these are the 5 core tenets of the theory. So, we want to be very aware of these and ensure that we are implementing them all effectively. So self-awareness, obviously you need to know yourself before you can help someone else unpack this kind of stuff, this deep toxic stress that we're dealing with and seeing in a lot of our classrooms. And that sort of ties into our second one, actually, self-management. Obviously, if you're not self-aware, if you don't, for example, if you are punishing a kid because you harsher than others because you unconsciously don't like him, that's a big problem. That can be traumatic in itself. That can cause toxic stress, in itself. So self-management, right? You have to, not only do you need to know yourself and understand that you will make mistakes and that, your own emotions and your experience that led you to your educator role is going to affect how you teach. So self-management, you need to be able to list the things, number one, self-awareness, and then manage them. And then we take it further with number three, social awareness. We understand who we are, right? With one and two, we know ourselves very well. But now we need to take that and use some of that empathy that our experience has allowed us to gain. And we need to understand the social norms, of course, understand other people's points of views, and also recognize that there is no one true experience. Everyone comes from their own extremely unique background. You're not going to find anyone who is exactly the same, even if they came from the exact same place, right? You could be brother and sister and be night and day. So you need to understand that, understand the individuality, how deep it goes, and relationship skills. Obviously, once you understand the level of individuality you're dealing with in most classrooms, you've got to establish and maintain healthy relationships with your students, of course. That's going to assist their learning. That's going to get them to feel safe and feel comfortable in class and actually be able to unpack some of that stress, right? Because that's the barrier number one, is safety in class. That's the biggest barrier. That's the most primary thing, right? If students don't feel safe in class, nothing's going to get done. So the relationship skills, making them feel comfortable, making them feel okay being themselves, and making them feel okay with mistakes and the learning process. So finally, we have decision making. Obviously, the first four are kind of all data, other than self management. That's more action based. But I would say one, three, and four are all very data based, very sort of knowledge and cognition based. But then two and five are the actions. So you need to understand all this information about, what your students tell you about their background, what your students tell you about what they're going through, the social norms that are at work in whatever learning context you find yourself in. And you need to be able to make the best possible choice, not only for the students, but for, the people who might be your boss, for yourself, obviously, if that's a factor. And it all has to happen within the social norm. So there's really a lot going on here. But I feel it's deceivingly complex, and we'll get into that more when we talk about the keywords. So, keywords. We have responsive caregiving. So that is caregiving that is understanding and nurturing, even to students with unique needs. So I've hit the individuality thing like a broken record, but again, every student is a 100% unique being. So you need to be able to care for people who may be completely different, who may need completely different things, who may react completely differently to the same approach. So you need to be very flexible. That's what I think the responsive caregiving comes down to: flexibility, knowing your students, and planning. Now we have affective. That's just having to do with emotions. So that's just a good one to know in general. Emotional security. That's the individual's ability to gauge their own emotional state and their ability to manage stress. So again, it's intrapersonal. It's not interpersonal. So it's a know thyself thing, not know thy student. So now we have empathy. Empathy, a huge thing, big. I'm sure everyone's heard that, but just to go over it again for those who haven't, understanding and sharing in someone else's feelings. So being able to sort of walk in their shoes or feel their pain or whatever term suits you best. So now I have temperament, obviously behavior, just mannerisms. I mean, everyone knows someone who has a grumpy temperament, sunny temperament. So very sort of their natural at rest state, right? How much more of this emotion is this person than, the average person? I hope that made sense. I said person a lot there. But, anyways, let's move on to self efficacy, I believe is how that's pronounced. So that's the level of confidence someone has in their ability to do something on an emotional level and get a desired performance result. So it's again kind of a know thyself thing, where you need to not only know how you feel in the moment, but how you react to things in the heat of the moment as they're developing. So again, a very important thing. It takes a lot of reflection, a lot of really high level hypothetical thinking. So very difficult concept, but I think we can boil it down very simply to how well do you know yourself on an emotional level, even when there's a lot of moving parts. Now we have emotional regulation. So that's the self control that an individual has over their own feelings. And that's, so sorry about that. The level of control they have over their own feelings, right? So, like Darean says here, the ability to sort of express your emotions within the range of whatever norms or rules or uh, you know whatever context you're in. It's all contextual, but it's also all interpersonal. So it's very interesting. An interesting mix of the interpersonal, but still a lot of self-knowledge involved here. Sense of self, obviously it's your perception of yourself, right? The perception of your traits or the traits within you that you view as your defining characteristics is how I like to look at it, right? So it's kind of your big 10 of traits or big five, the things you would say first, because those are usually the biggest pieces of you. Impulse control. So obviously control over just random intrusive thoughts that come into your head, control over your behavior, control over your emotions. So intersects a lot with emotional regulation, but it also kind of factors in the very random, very rapid impulses I'm sure a lot of people have. Social understanding. That's our final word today. And that's the ability to figure out another person's mental state. So again, that requires a lot of knowledge. That requires a lot of responsive caregiving. So these keywords sort of all weave together to form this very cohesive, I think, very positive, very promising theory. Um, Now we'll move on to the next slide. And this is the video slide, so I'm going to pause this. But like I said, we will not be watching it in this recording. However, I will embed this presentation on my website, and maybe I'll embed the video itself on the website as well. Anyways, I hope you found this video informative. Have a wonderful day.